Good morning, good afternoon. How you doing out there today? Wherever you are in the world today, this is David Robert for the Marketplace of Ideas podcast. I hope you're having a wonderful, great December as we are moseying on into Christmas. What are we in? Day 7? Good Lord. Christmas is, I want to say, less than 2 weeks away. Or no, more than, what are we at? So 14. So we've got about two and a bit or so. I got to do the math, but nonetheless, Christmas is coming. If you believe in such things, if you don't, then hopefully you'll be able to spend time with friends and family, get together. Who knows what we'll be doing? You know, it depends on if everyone's not sick as dogs like last year, you know. But just want to let you know before we get started, you can find the Marketplace of Ideas podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm talking Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, you name it, we are there. And you'll be able to find us soon on YouTube once we are able to get the RSS feeds to put the audio versions onto YouTube. Right now, I believe you can only do it in the States, and I think internationally, but it's coming to Canada pretty soon, and then we'll also have the videos there. Also look for the Adult Fitness podcast. We got some great stuff there as well. Also, the Strange Tales podcast, so look for that. We've got a lot of great stuff coming in December and January. Lord willing, we keep this train moving, and we got the blogs and everything as well. So, yeah, This was an interesting one because I'd heard this news just the other day and I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought it was actually some type of a joke, sort of like a little gag for the end of the year. But I hadn't paid much attention to this publication in some time. But I guess Time Magazine named their Person of the Year in the form of Taylor Swift. And just like a lot of people out there who follow a lot of pop culture news, from music to film to television to streaming to what's going on online with various platforms such as Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Twitch and TikTok, and I don't know if Threads is still a thing from Facebook. I haven't really checked it out, but anywhere that news and people would congregate to talk about anything in regard to things that are popular, Taylor Swift was on the radar from late last year until this year. Wow, she's not a whore. Her album, which I'll have to get the name of it because that shows you how much of a fan I am, but her album that she released last year, let me just take a look, see. Quick cursory glance. It has done gangbusters. Her Eras tour is the first tour to gross over $1 billion as of 16 hours ago. Goodness gracious. I mean, well, with the ticket sales, the way they were, I mean, damn, you know, it's, she has been any and everywhere you could possibly think of. Born 1989, so she's 33 years old in West Pennsylvania. Her parents, Scott and Andrea. She has one brother. She is, her net worth as of right now is $1.1 billion. She is, dare I say, one of the most popular pop artists right now, outside of Drake, Adele. There's some other names you throw out there. As soon as you hear them, you get the image in your head of who they are and what kind of songs they have. She has been recognized for her songwriting, musical versatility, artistic reinventations, and influence on popular culture and the music industry. She started in 2004, which, if anybody is, how should I put this? if anybody is familiar with the entertainment industry, from music to film to any form of expression, you realize and understand how hard it is to maintain a level of excellence as well as maintain a level of dominance within that industry. I mean, we have artists, according to Big Boy from Big Boy's radio station in the States, from Big Boy's neighborhood. He basically said something that sums up what a lot of us feel about the entertainment, which is people are here today and gone this afternoon. The amount of one-hit wonders and coulda, shoulda, woulda been talented stars and actresses and actors that litter the music and pop culture, highway is too numerous to name. There are YouTube channels that are literally dedicated just to people who have failed at their craft, who have, had one hit, maybe two, and then disappeared from all acknowledgement of their existence whatsoever. So the fact that she's been at this, for 20 years is to say something, right? This year in particular. And I think particularly for a woman as well, and I'm not trying to, say anything crazy, but the industry of music and entertainment is so caustic and so corrosive that even the most talented and the most, thick-skinned and thick-shelled individuals find it a daunting task. So I can't even imagine what it's like for somebody she's 33. I mean, think about that for a second. She's literally been at this for more than half of her life. And so, but nonetheless, just to give you a little bit of if you've been living under a rock and you don't know who this lady is, she's been at the forefront of many of cases and causes within pop culture. And she's recently, as of her last album, taken on the plight of the LGBTQ plus people in her society, in America in particular, that are under a lot of attack from legislative bodies as well as just criticism from right-wing conservative Republicans who hate all things happy and good. So yeah, she has been picked as Time's Person of the Year. And my criticism or my critique is not about necessarily her, because she started songwriting at 14, was signed to Big Machine Records, subsequently went on to leave that record company after selling almost over 200 million records sold globally. She's one of the best-selling music artists of all time. I believe, as of the recording of this, she's the highest-grossing female performer ever, and the first billionaire with music as the main source of income. So it's not like a Jay-Z where he's got like the liquor and he's got his clothing line and then he branched down into other things, or Dr. Dre with Beats by Dre, or Drake, or Quincy Jones, or any of these other artists. I believe her main income is her songwriting, which is pretty crazy because when you think about it, the fact that she probably owns the publishing and the masters of her own recordings, which is what is probably making her so rich. She has been, she's appeared in lists such as Rolling Stone's 100 Greatest Songwriters of All Time, Billboard's Greatest of All Time Artists, and the World's 100 Most Powerful Women by Forbes. Among her accolades are 12 Grammy Awards, 3 Album of the Year Awards, including 3 Album of the Year Awards, a Primetime Emmy Award, 40 American Music Awards, including Artist of the Decade for the 2010s, 39 Billboard Music Awards, 23 MTV Video Music Awards, 3 IFPI Global Recording Artists of the Year Awards, and 111 Guinness World Records. A highly publicized personality, Swift is a philanthropist and advocate for artists' rights and women's empowerment. Holy crap. So, my whole thing, I guess, with Taylor Swift is that I was more of a cursory fan. I was more of a casual listener. I'd hear her stuff on the radio, but I don't subscribe to her YouTube channel, and I don't have a Spotify playlist with her stuff on it. But I'm well aware of her songwriting and stuff. And it was right around Kobe Bryant's second or third last interview before his untimely passing with his daughter and the members of her basketball team, as well as her coaches and teammates, and the pilot of that plane that went down just at the beginning of 2020, where he was being interviewed, and Kobe Bryant was just casually mentioning that he drives his daughter to school, and the interviewer said something along the lines of, "Hey, I bet you listen to, it's not like you have Taylor Swift in the car," or something like that. It was just an offhanded remark. But then Kobe Bryant kind of, in his intense manner, stood there and said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "She's a killer. The way she's able to stay on top of music and to be able to change in this sea of ever-changing, stuff that's going on." He was so adamant about how much of just a warlord she was on the charts. And it made me sit up and take notice. And I was like, oh, okay. Now, granted, for myself, I have, like a lot of people my age, my vintage, you have a various type of tastes when it comes to music. And I'm pretty much stuck a lot in my ways when it comes to the music I like. There's certain artists that I gravitate towards, and I like their stuff, and I try to branch out every now and again to see what else is going on out there, but I usually stay to my normal haunts, as it were. I don't necessarily branch out too much musically, and that could be a bit of a problem because you get stuck in your ways. And so I started looking at artists like a Taylor Swift or a Justin Bieber, or more of the pop artists that aren't R&B or that aren't hip hop or that aren't rock or old school, like, Lindy Hop, if you're into that sort of stuff for dancing and everything else. But in listening to her lyrics and into some of her songs, she's got the Shake It Offs, and she's got the Never Find Another One Like Me, or We'll Never Get Back Together, stuff like that. But she also has very introspective and very deep lyrics that she puts out there. And the fact that she's still not even 40, right? And been writing songs that have been the template for a lot of people's memories, weddings, and graduations, and anniversaries. She's definitely cemented herself within history. And so my critique of Taylor Swift, or not even a critique, but just analyzing what she's been doing, has nothing to do with her personally. She seems like a really great person, and I've never heard of her, I don't know, a DUI or slapping her cat or something like that. But I think what kind of grabbed my attention is when, in a year, if we're going to be honest, since the start of this year, we've seen tragedies unfold with gun violence in the United States. We've seen another war break out in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, in Israel, where people are being brutalized in a manner that we haven't seen in a very long time. We still have another war going on another front within Ukraine, and where Russia has tried to invade them. Going into the second winter now, that we have looming problems with Taiwan and China. The U.S. is, trying to flex their muscle over there. There are skirmishes on numerous fronts. We have high inflation. We've got, climate change issues. And it feels to me like to place Taylor Swift on the cover of Time magazine as the person of the year kind of takes away from, and this is by no means an insult to her, but it takes away from people who are doing work that is really significant to the point that they're saving lives, and they are impacting people on a gut level, on a real level, on a not just an emotional level. Now, I definitely want to say this, that since, I would say technically since 2019, when we were all counting down into 2020, the end of a decade, and we were all hoping that things would get better, good God, that year alone, we literally saw the introduction to basically our version of the Black Plague. Like, thank God it wasn't the Black Plague, but COVID-19 came in and just kicked the nuts out of that year like you wouldn't believe. And then we had the race reckonings, if you would, with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and another individual, which I can never pronounce his name properly, the gentleman who was jogging and was shot by two idiots in their pickup truck, actually three. And thankfully, all of the people that have done this to murder innocent black people, at least, 2 out of the 3 cases, there was justice found. In Breonna Taylor's case, they settled out of court with the officers and the district attorney. I believe it was in, I want to say Kentucky. I'm not quite sure. I've got to actually check that out. But you had that going on, and then you had, really hot temperatures that year, and it was just a rough year for a lot of people. We had individuals who said they didn't want to take the vaccine. Some said, if you don't take it, you're an idiot. Some say if you took it, you were an idiot. We had political unrest, social unrest. And then the following year, there was the riot on January 6th at the Capitol in Washington, the Washington White House, where it damn near looked like people were going to try to overthrow the government. Like, what the heck? And then just everything that's happening, from inflation to high interest rates to Russia and Ukraine to now, Israel versus Gaza versus Lebanon versus Syria, for crying out loud. Then you have the problem with Afghanistan, where, the U.S. pulled out and the Taliban just went right back. So after 20 years and over $2 trillion worth of war and damage, the Taliban just took it back. And since then, we've seen just so much pain and suffering. Now, there's been good things too. We've had friends and family, we've had babies and buy homes and get remarried and start businesses. But overall, it's been a couple of trying years. And people like a Taylor Swift or a Drake, or even, your local sports star, Connor McDavid, or Tom Brady when he was still playing, or any celebrity, star, athlete, musician you could possibly think of. They have this talent or the skill set, and they're able to kind of take you out of the world that sucks right now. You could sit for 2 hours and watch a movie with Tom Cruise, with Top Gun, or Transformers, or listen to a song by Taylor Swift or Drake, listen to a whole CD or an EP, or listen to their Spotify playlist and just get taken out of the shit. Get removed from the garbage that's out there, that's flooding your timeline, that's filling up your headspace and making you feel terrible, like the world's going to end. And so I fully get somebody like a Taylor Swift being in that space where we could say, hey, man, rent's gone up, family's not talking, my job's been downsized, right-sized, outsourced, getting a divorce, your kids aren't talking to you, blah, 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 whatever else. Or you're just jogging and you're working out, or you need a soundtrack to your day, and you just put on Taylor Swift, put on some Drake, put on some Adele, and you're no longer there. It's totally true. When you are listening to a song or deep involved into something, you're no longer in that problem. And so I completely get why an entertainer or somebody who has the level of talent that Taylor Swift has would get on this stage. She's done a lot, and by no means is her accomplishments something to scoff at. When Prince passed away, Sinbad, the comic from the 90s, said they're not making them like him anymore. People like George Michael, David Bowie, Elton John, Elvis Presley, Bruce Springsteen, Madonna, who else? Boyz II Men, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston. These artists come along once once every couple of generations we see them. And so while they're here, you need to appreciate them. But also, I think we've, and this is kind of where I want to really take this episode, is that I feel our focus as a culture is kind of skewed for who we look up to. Like, rather than put Taylor Swift on the cover, and again, Entertainer of the Year, Album of the Year, whatever you want to give her, cool. But when it comes to people who've saved people's lives, who have fought for policies to allow women to maintain the rights over their bodies, or to allow immigrants to come into your borders, or to make sure that people have clean drinking water, and our students are being taught, proper, realistic facts in schools, and that people who are fighting against pseudoscience and actually for solid peer-reviewed research in medicine and in physics, like, we should be lifting up these people, entertainers and athletes and people who make us laugh and who cause us to cheer. They have their place in society. By no means should we make fun of somebody who's put time, money, and effort into building their craft. A Connor McDavid who's spent decades perfecting his skill set on the ice, or somebody such as a Lamar Jackson who plays for the Ravens, who's like an out of this world talent. Just a joy to watch on the field. Or somebody like a Tom Brady, who literally is the GOAT. I was fighting it for a while, but he is. And I get it. I totally understand these people take us out of the garbage, but the people that we should be lifting up are the ones, I personally feel, are the firefighters who are fighting to save people's homes and communities this summer, in particular, when my province in Alberta and other parts of the world were literally on fire. There's a clip of Questlove, drummer for The Roots, who has, on his Instagram, he was talking about how the next coming couple of years are going to be really trying for people who, if we're going to be honest, who don't have the means to protect themselves from the climate change, so who may not have enough money to travel, or who may not have HEPA filters in their homes, or things of that nature. And he was saying we've got to turn this thing around, because it is the third world countries that are paying the price. And there was a clip that he put on his Instagram, and it had the new video game for Diablo, Welcome to Hell, in the summer. I think it was in August or something. And the smoke, it literally looked like this film on your camera when you want to add a certain background to it. And it was red and hazy, and it didn't look like it was from this earth. It looked like the yellow sun of Krypton. It was frightening. And there are firefighters in the mix of that, and yet no mention of those people. There is a lady who I'll actually bring up her name real quick. She, if I'm not mistaken, she won the Nobel Peace Prize. Let me see here. Let me just see here. Yes. So, Hungarian scientist Caitlin Karikó and U.S. colleague Drew Wiseman, who met in line for a photocopier before making mRNA molecule discoveries that paved the way for COVID-19 vaccines, won the 2023 Nobel Peace Prize on Monday, October 2nd. They weren't even in the running for the Time Person of the Year. Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, was one of them. Barbie, the toy, based on the movie, was up for Person of the Year. I forget who else there was. See who else was up for it. This year's list was the Hollywood strikers, the Chinese president Xi Jinping, Barbie, Federal Reserve Chairman Jeremy Powell, Russian President Vladimir Putin, the Trump prosecutors, King Charles III. Good Lord. I mean, the only person on here I would see with any reason to be on there would probably be Sam Altman, if we're going to be honest here. But the lady that I mentioned prior literally created something that allowed society as a whole not to fall to crap. Think about what would have happened had we taken the standard 10 years to have a vaccine for COVID. Imagine if you would. Just hop on the Wayback Machine with me. March 2020. The gym that I was working out officially shut down right at the end of March. I think it was March the 27th or something of that nature. I got a call from my friend saying that all the gyms within the city in Edmonton had shut down, and if that was going to be the case in Spruce Grove and Stony Plain and Sherwood Park and St. Albert and Leduc and Red Deer and all the other surrounding areas in Edmonton here in Alberta. And I was like, I don't know. And so I go online and I see, yep, we're shut down. So I get the call from the manager and the general manager for all of Alberta. And it's like, yeah, you know what? You're going to have to shelter in place. We're going to make sure you guys are getting, the CERB, which was in the States, I believe they were called, not stimulus packages, but, oh my gosh, there's a word for it in the States, but basically everywhere in developing countries, they were giving people, a portion of what they were getting paid just to stay at home while they figure this out before the hospitals literally get flooded, because that's what they thought were going to happen. They were going to get flooded with people, and before you know it, regular emergencies were not going to be taken care of. And so here we were, scared as hell. You're at home with your family, and imagine if you would, we did not have a vaccine for this disease. And we were still sheltering. Imagine 3 years from now. Imagine like for 3 years straight. People were living like they were at the end of March. People lost their damn minds. Fighting over toilet paper, punching people in the face due to masks and mandates. We subsequently, I believe the January 6th riots would not have happened if it wasn't for COVID. We probably would have had the same premier that we had back in 2019. COVID destroyed a lot of stuff. And this lady, this Hungarian scientist, along with her colleague, won the Nobel Peace Prize in October, but wasn't even in the running to be placed as Time's Person of the Year. And I feel that's kind of where I want to focus, because not only is our focus and our attention off, but we're focusing on the wrong people. We're focusing on the wrong parts of history as far as importance goes. I was reading this book a long time ago, and in it they were talking about bread and circuses. And in the Roman Empire, towards the end of the reign of Caesar, if I'm not mistaken, I could have it wrong here, but the Roman Empire was starting to fall. The people who were running the communities and the cities and the municipalities in that time period, stuff wasn't good, and things were falling apart. And at that time period, the people who were in charge were just looting the treasury, trying to get as much money as they could so they can get out of Dodge before the rest of the population found out that there was no grain and that society was crumbling. And so to keep people occupied, what they would do is they would have these huge events in these arenas, and they would either have chariot races or gladiator battles to keep people kind of occupied so they didn't realize how bad the shit was. And that's what we have in modern day times right now. We have modern day gladiator battles with mixed martial arts and boxing and football and hockey and baseball. The fervor that's surrounding new signees when they come into the league for the NBA or the NFL or for the Stanley Cup Finals or for the NBA Finals, it's staggering to see how much money people will spend to travel, to pay for hotels, to have tailgate parties, to buy merchandise and jerseys and everything else. It's insane. And the wages that we pay actors as well as artists as well as athletes, they are made to be the height of achievement and our jealousy almost. We put them on a pedestal. If a young man can skate like the wind and puck handle like you wouldn't believe, get him on a team and we will pay him a king's ransom. Money that would have been unfathomable to pay one human being just to play a game, or to recite lines, or to be able to throw an insane right hook. We'll pay for that. Meanwhile, the money that we need to survive and to pay the people that are actually keeping us alive, such as nurses and doctors, policemen, firefighters, we can't even fund their pensions. I mean, we can, but the fact of the matter is that they're not at top of mind for society. And there was an article I wanted to read here, as I'm wont to do on these episodes, and it kind of mirrored what I was thinking, but it was written probably today or yesterday. Yes, today. Yeah, so it was just 5 minutes here. It's written by CNN. It's an opinion piece written by Holly Thompson, published at 10:07 a.m., Friday, December 8th. So here we go. Let's see. Taylor Swift is Time's 2023 Person of the Year, and apparently I'm the only millennial woman on Earth who doesn't feel seen. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but since the announcement, it's felt like a specific corner of Spotify Wrapped got bitten by a radioactive spider and attained superhuman powers. I'm happy for her, I guess. I've nothing against a seemingly pleasant person having a lovely time, and there's no denying she's had a stellar year. As Time's feature details, Swift's now made more #1 albums than any other woman in history, has world leaders begging her to tour their nations, and has reportedly become a billionaire. Swift is the rare person who is both the writer and the hero of her own story, says Time. That's great. I just don't find that story especially compelling. Ugh, I feel so mean. I'm well aware this will upset people, and I'd never want to rob anyone else of their joy. We've all had conversations with people who simply don't get the music or TV we're into. Typically, my response to such complaints is, that's okay, it wasn't made for you. But part of what makes me so squirmy is the sense that Swift and the stories she tells through her music are basically aimed at me. This person writing this is a white middle-aged lady. If you lined me up alongside everyone I know who's currently rhapsodizing over her success, I'd be indistinguishable. But I'm not biting. That's not because I think there's anything wrong with her. If anything, my choice for Person of the Year would be more problematic. Historically, the title recipient has often been a provocateur. The idea isn't necessarily that the best person wins, though that's certainly been the case at times. It's that the person who's had the most influence, for good or ill, over the previous 12 months is recognized. Previous winners have included Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Greta Thunberg, Martin Luther King Jr., and Elon Musk. This year's shortlist included holiday strikers, Chinese President Barbie, Federal Reserve Chairman Jeremy Powell, Russian President Vladimir Putin, the Trump prosecutors, King Charles III, and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. Time ultimately named Altman CEO of the Year. I think he should have taken the top title. In case it hasn't crossed your radar, Altman is the 38-year-old chief executive of OpenAI, the tech startup responsible for creating ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a revolutionary my gosh. ChatGPT is a revolutionary generative artificial intelligence chatbot that was launched in November 2022. It's since astounded observers by passing exams at law and business schools, effectively writing job applications and computer code, and composing part of a political speech for Israel's president. The implications of that tech alone are both miraculous and terrifying, particularly given the potential for disinformation campaigns to influence the presidential election for just next year. Many companies besides OpenAI are vying for a bite of that lucrative AI market, competing to develop newer, ever more sophisticated systems through the Biden administration. Though the Biden administration recently introduced legislation to regulate the exploding industry, the pace of development is so rapid that it's often difficult for government entities to keep up. The mysterious and almost magical speed of the AI race was evident in November, when less than a year after ChatGPT's launch, Altman was fired suddenly by his company's board. Just days later, Microsoft, OpenAI's biggest stakeholder, announced it was hiring Altman to head up a new AI team. This prompted a mass revolt among OpenAI staff, almost all of whom threatened to quit unless Altman was rehired. Within days he was, and the board that fired him was replaced. The circumstances around Altman's dismissal and rehiring were remarkably murky. In their statement announcing his sacking, the original board accused Altman of not consistently being candid in his communications, and didn't elaborate on what that meant. Even worrying, Altman's return and the restructuring of OpenAI have been characterized as a victory for AI accelerationists, those who believe that the tech should be developed as fast as possible, unconstrained by safety concerns. This episode proved that Altman wasn't just capable of spearheading potentially the most significant invention of the 21st century so far, he was able to upend the ecosystem that created it in days. So let me see here. This is why Altman, not Swift, ought to have been Time's Person of the Year. His impact on the world could be exceptionally more consequential, but not nearly enough people are aware of him or the implications of his technology. Evermore, Swift makes, however, incidentally, every move Swift makes, however, incidentally, is the subject of feverish intrigue and speculation. Over in San Francisco, Altman is making moves that could change the fate of the world, and until a month ago, most of us were unaware he even existed. So, there you have it. And I think one of the things that always needs to come across when talking about these sort of issues is that it doesn't mean if you disagree with a publication of who they put on their cover that you're hating, that you're just a hating ass, bitter individual who has no love in their heart for art or culture or anything to do with the zeitgeist of what people love and care about. And that couldn't be further from the truth. But I think somebody like a Sam Altman or somebody like the gentleman who just got sentenced for blowing up the cryptocurrency industry, Sam Bankman-Fried, if I believe that's his name. There's just so many other people and industries that have and are going to impact our lives for the next 10 to 20, 30, 40 years, depending on how this technology advances, that it almost seems I don't want to use the wrong words here, but it almost feels a little bit presumptuous to say that an entertainer should have the top spot in our society versus somebody whose technology could literally change how we see finance, entertainment. I mean, think about it. Most of what was going on with Hollywood right now, if you think about it, and if you really delve into the Hollywood strike and the writer's strike and the actor strikes, had to do with AI. There are technologies coming online as we speak, as the recording of this episode, that could render hundreds of thousands of jobs obsolete, from copywriting to script writing, There are technologies that could scan your likeness and then utilize that for, for all of perpetuity, all of time, as long as there are films to be made, and just use your image long after you're dead. And so studios and people were battling it out to say, look, we need to restructure this. One of the reasons that Taylor Swift is a billionaire is due to streaming and algorithms and YouTube and the technology that many of us have in our palms and in our back pockets that we have no idea how it works, yet it controls so much of our lives. 97% of the population over the age of, over the age of 15 has a cell phone. That's unbelievable reach. And for my part one, I feel that's people who are in charge of these sort of technologies and who are spearheading them should be the ones that we are acknowledging. And that goes for doctors and nurses and scientists and engineers and physicists and civil engineers and teachers and nurses and road crew maintenance workers and people who keep the lights on literally and figuratively. Folks who allow us to flush our toilets so we don't have to throw our refuge out in the in the backyard. People that make sure that our homes are built to code, so we don't have accidents where homes just start to collapse. In a lot of third world countries, you have that as the case. So I'm very much an advocate for trying to recognize people who are doing the Lord's work and doing it in a way that allows society to be safe and to function and to thrive. And that doesn't take away from what Taylor Swift and anybody who's an entertainer or an actor or a sports figure is doing. But the level of importance and the level of severity of what they do versus what somebody like a Taylor Swift does is apples and oranges. And it's kind of insulting. And I think to end this, I definitely want to say I feel that's where it shows our society is going and what we value, what we put as a focal point in our lives. Fantasy football to March Madness are billion-dollar industries. Horse racing to boxing to anything to do with entertainment at a high level could make you wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. And yet the people that literally keep us alive sometimes have to fight for a living wage. I remember very distinctly what it was like during the throes of the pandemic. We're talking early days where they were still talking about bend the curve and social distancing and masking and washing every piece of fruit. I remember hearing stories of how people would wash everything that came from the outside into their home. Stories of people literally coming after banking hours. I had a friend who told me about this when I worked at the gym. His wife was working at a bank and they had to close, and they allowed this older couple to come in and withdraw literally almost all of their life savings, like close to $300,000, because they had to be there to count it out and everything, because they felt the world banks were going to collapse. They felt this was going to be their Y2K. For those of a certain age who remember that. And that if they didn't take their money out and maybe put it into gold or into some other commodity, they'd be left on the street. And what we saw during that time period was people saying to janitors and to people delivering food and people taking care of the sick that, hey, you're valuable. You matter. We heard it repeatedly that Hollywood stars and athletes People were actually saying the quiet part out loud. And these people didn't matter. Sure, they were great at their craft, but in reality, there was not really much to them. And that the true people that were really important were the people that were making sure that the buses were running on time. People making sure that the trains were rolling. That the truck drivers and the people bringing food and medicine and supplies, they were the ones we should be looking up to. They were the ones we should be cheering. And I'll tell you, for a time, we were doing it. We were cheering the nurses and the doctors around the clock. But you know what? It got old, and people got bored, and people turned to the things that they felt would make them feel good. And we kind of forgot. And yeah, man. Unfortunately, we're kind of at the pre-COVID levels where people are right back to caring about things that just aren't as important. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say today. It wasn't necessarily to crap all over Taylor Swift, because Lord knows what she's done in the music industry alone is staggering. We just don't see that often, if ever, and I don't think we will again, if I'm going to be 100% honest. But what I will say, and it would be really nice, is if we could just give and maintain that level of, I want to say, love and appreciation for the regular folks out there. Like, there should be something where we're like, hey, in pop culture, we're going to recognize the people that are doing the work that nobody wants to do. I'll close with this. There was a show a number of years ago called Dirty Jobs. And in it, the creator and writer of the show was wanting to showcase the jobs that are important for keeping us alive, but nobody wanted to do. So we're talking about septic tank operators. We're talking about people that wash reusable diapers. We were talking about people who work at canneries and at jobs that when you come home, not enough showers are able to take the smell off. From construction to road work to whatever. And on this show, Dirty Jobs, he was showing that the things that we take so much for granted, the fact that I could turn on a light switch and confidently say that, yeah, there's going to be power, or I can open up a faucet of water, and if we paid our water bill, we can trust that we have water that's going to be safe to drink. A good portion of the world doesn't have that. They just don't. And the fact that we do, and the fact that we don't even have to think about it, means that to place somebody as a Taylor Swift on that list means that we've somewhat eschewed the value we put on things that actually keep us alive versus the things that entertain us. And just in closing, I want to say I have the utmost respect for somebody like a Taylor Swift. And so this is not me crapping on the girl. God bless her for what she's done. She's doing the Lord's work. But as a society, if we're really going to survive and we're really going to at least move to a place where we won't even need a minimum wage anymore, because we'll just pay people what they are owed. And in conjunction to how important what they're doing for society is, I would say personally that I think this is a point where we can step back and actually sit and think, hey, you know what? Maybe we can start to reevaluate some stuff, you know? But yeah, that was kind of my take on the whole thing. I definitely feel that it's interesting. All of these publications, the New York Times bestseller, Time Person of the Year, Sexiest Man Alive, all these sort of tags that we put on really famous people. It's kind of, it's weird. It's weird, but it's where we are in society, and I think it's really neat to kind of take a deep dive and just kind of look at it under the surface versus how we kind of, it's just thrown at us, and then we're like, oh, okay, I guess that's a thing, you know, kind of whatever. But nonetheless, like I was saying, thank you for listening. Much appreciated. Hopefully this episode was able to add some value to your day or just mildly entertain you. But until next time, I want you to take care, be good to one another out there, and yeah, keep your head on a swivel. Peace.